Before we plunge into global power games and economic cliffhangers, meet a literal cliffhanger. A goat in Hawaii, stuck for a week, rescued, but plot twist, she was pregnant. That's right, it's a feel-good, babby on-boarded moment to kick off the week.
On the Big Island, a dramatic rescue of a stranded goat in North Kohala ends in success. Two volunteers used a two-pronged approach by land and sea to finally wrangle the goat from a Hawaii cliff. They lifted her to safety and took her to a veterinarian. Turns out she's pregnant. Doctors say she's about 3 years old and doing well despite being stuck on a cliff for at least a week. We first told you about the goat on Tuesday. She's expected to be adopted by a local goat company that uses goats for vegetation control.
Welcome back to Wired, the only news show where scandal, sanctions, and sunstroke all play supporting roles to a goat with maternal grit. I'm your host of Headlines, Wendy, and this week we've got Trump v. Epstein files, EU ducking its own values, BRICS rewriting the global tech rulebook, and yes, tariffs. Let's start with the return of a storyline we hoped had retired, Jeffrey Epstein. This week, Trump's DOJ made a bold move, asking federal courts to unseal 2019 grand jury transcripts in the Epstein case, citing public concern. That's a polite way of saying, let's get ahead of this before someone else leaks it. These transcripts probably won't contain bombshell victim testimony, more likely just agent summaries. But that hasn't stopped Trump from suing the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion over claims he sent Epstein a bawdy birthday note. He denies it, of course, and now he's calling critics radical left lunatics. Meanwhile, MAGA world is split. Some call this a tactical legal flex, others just want it off the feed. Across the Atlantic, the EU is in hot diplomatic water for refusing to sanction Israel, despite admitting it likely violated human rights during Gaza operations. After months of internal reports and external pressure, the bloc concluded there were indications of breaches, but still avoided suspending trade ties. Why? Politics. Germany, Hungary, and others blocked tougher action, while Spain and Ireland screamed betrayal. Amnesty called it a cruel and unlawful betrayal. The EU's response maybe will pause academic exchange later. Meanwhile, on a sunnier beach in Rio, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus new friends like Egypt and Iran, signed a declaration calling for the UN to lead global AI governance. A bold push from the global South. They want AI to be open, rights-based, and inequality-proof. It's not just talk. This is BRICS framing the next digital arms race, not with silicon, but with ethics. Now to the global economy, where the vibe is cautiously upbeat with a side of trade panic. The IMF is slightly raising its 2025 growth forecast, yay, but warns that renewed tariff threats could kick global trade in the teeth. Boo. According to their models, another round of trade wars could shave half a point off global growth. Over in the U.S., Wall Street soared and then tripped over its own shoelaces. Trump's threats of 15 to 20% tariffs on Europe and even murmurs about China and India spooked markets. Fitch says average U.S. tariffs could spike to nearly 20%. That's Smoot-Hawley territory for those keeping historical score. Speaking of trade drama, Japan's PM Ishiba is racing against an August 1st deadline to stop a 25% U.S. auto tariff. He just dispatched top negotiator Akazawa to Washington after talks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent in Osaka. The good news? Both sides say a deal is possible. The bad news? There's an election coming, and trade deals don't love election cycles. While leaders fiddle with tariffs, Europe is literally on fire. Between June and July, a brutal heat wave roasted the continent, breaking records with highs of 46.6 degrees Celsius in Portugal. Over 2,300 excess deaths were reported, 3 times higher than it would have been without climate change, according to scientists. France shut down schools, Spain canceled outdoor events, and across the continent, people asked, is this just the new normal? Spoiler alert, according to the data, yes it is. Back to BRICS for a moment, because while the West argues over chips and chatbots, the Global South is planting a flag in the future. The Rio Summit's AI declaration calls on the UN to build a global governance system for AI, one that's inclusive, fair, and not dominated by Silicon Valley or Beijing. It's a smart play, setting the moral frame early before big tech or big state locks it in. And if all of that's too much geopolitics for one brain, just remember, a pregnant goat defied the odds, balanced on a cliff, and got rescued by humans. There is hope. That's your world this week. Fiery, fragile, and occasionally four-legged. If you like the ride, subscribe, comment with your favorite part of today's lineup of stories, and stay tuned for next week's global news recap. Who knows what cliff will be dangling from next? Until then, stay sharp, stay sane, and stay wired. Wendy signing off.